Multi-millionaires telling kids who can't afford to turn the heating on, you just need to be more entrepreneurial. It's sick, Dan. It's
For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
In a trade war this disastrous, no one wins.
I know that this episode may come across that I'm very doom and gloom, as if I'm just so pessimistic, but I promise you, it's coming from an optimistic heart. And just bear with me, stick with me, and let's just discuss what the hell is going on. Put into the comments what you think, and let's get into it.
my perspective is, I can tell you with a very, very high rate of certainty, if you don't fix this problem of the wealth being sucked out of the middle class, 98% of people will be in poverty in this country in 70 years.
Guys, before we get into this episode truly and properly, I need you to do me one quick massive favor, and that's please like, comment, share and subscribe. In order for the channel to grow, it's gonna need your support. I am not asking for your money, I'm not asking for a subscription, I am just asking for you, if you like the video, if you're fond of it, if you just had a slightly warm feeling, just to hit the subscription button. And if you're feeling sexy and felt like that wasn't too bad, share it. Spread it. That's the only way. Whoa, that was a pause. I'm sorry. I was trying to be mature, but that was crazy. But I don't know how else to say it. How else would you say spread it? Share the video in it. Share the video. Give it to people if you think it could be helpful towards them. It's actually a part of my conclusion for the episode. So hey, I'm waffling, but please, I'm gonna need your support. So let's get into it. I thought there's no better place to start this video than the backdrop of how we got here.
Now, some very, very sketchy details reaching us here at Sky Centre. Important enough to bring to you, though, at this early stage. We believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
Right now, we're getting information, Al, that it was a small commuter plane. And of course, we'll let people know as soon as we have more information as to what actually caused this. And of course, on everybody's mind, who might have been hurt.
60 on page 153.
What we've just seen is about the most shocking videotape I've ever seen.
What are the odds of two separate planes hitting both towers?
It is completely impossible to understand why this is happening and to figure out what in the world is going on.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
It blew up, a big explosion, people started running, it was just chaos everywhere.
I thought there was no better place to start this video than the backdrop of how we got here. I'm a naive fool and I like to understand the roots of things.
Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard about 9/11? Those bombs, the two towers, twin towers I should say. I remember, I was in year 3, running around the playground, seeing helicopters in the sky, thinking, what is going on? Shout out to anyone that's from Winterbourne, they will know, they will remember. We got sent home early. And I remember just watching my mum watch what was going on. And I remember this feeling of fear and dread that I had, and I was very young, a very young Tabor. I was scared.
I don't want my responsibility no more!
And it feels as if since then that we've lived in a perpetual state of fear. I think what has happened since that period, and many analyses have discussed this, research into this can support this.
And ushered in a new era of conflict and fear. From mass government surveillance, new immigration programs, alongside growing anti-immigrant sentiment and Islamophobia, to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and even the rise of Daesh.
There is now a perpetual state of fear that we live in. We live in a constant state of war, pending war, cyber war, that is very apparent in society. Not to speak of the debt burden that happened, where in America they spent between $6 to $9
$100 billion.
trillion. And it's a number I struggle to comprehend. You're going to hear that and think, oh, I probably knew that anyway, whatever. But think about that, 6 to 9 trillion. And guess who that debt fell onto?
Me? You mean me?
The people. And the profiteers were the defense contractors. Some of you may hear that and just think jargon, news talk. I get it. It's probably something you've heard before. It's not undiscovered information. I haven't found the secret to Atlantis with that. But my point is, and you will discover there's a theme that governments will do things, in some cases against what the people want. And it's the people that are paying for it.
Oh, no, you cannot joke about that.
Yeah, that's not funny, Arthur.
You know who actually won out of the war on terror? It wasn't even Iraq, who had nothing to do with terrorism, but were the centerpiece on the war on terror. Tells you about manipulation, tells you about propaganda, tells you about how fear spreads during that time. It wasn't the people, because they were saddled with a debt burden. Also, they were made to feel unheard. It increased fear, xenophobia, Islamophobia. It was not the people. Barely was even politicians, although if they had stocks in defense contractors, they would have increased their profits and been richer. It was, as you could probably tell from that statement, defense contractors. Another example where corporations put their profits over people. But what did that lead to? That lack of oversight over other parts of society, that hyper focus on terrorism, what did it lead to?
Apple's up more than 6% right now. Google about 3%, but Dell, Intel, Research Motion, and Microsoft are all to the upside. Look how strong.
Did not disappoint. 400 points higher. Yes, indeed. The markets roar higher last 30 minutes of trading as volatility once again rules the day.
Most of the techs this morning, if not all of them, have just exploded to the upside. We are better than 5% to the upside at NASDAQ, 114 points. Or so Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
Started in America last year, has now spread to every part of the world.
We're down 9% today. The Xetra DAX over in Frankfurt is down by 9%. The Paris market down by 9%. Austria, which was briefly suspended earlier on in the day, is down by nearly 11%.
This market is as volatile as you'll ever see.
Traders say this is the craziest day they have ever seen in these markets. Veteran traders saying they've never seen anything like it. The movement in oil prices so fast, so furious.
Cicero was right. We're in the last days of this country surviving.
Major technology sectors. Apple's under pressure. Yahoo down 8.5%. Cisco 6.5%. Research in Motion 10%.
I don't want to be deceptive of what exactly happened. The war on terror did not directly correlate to what happened in 2008 regarding the banks and the subprime mortgages and the almost crashing of our economy at the time. It's got nothing. It hasn't got anything directly to do with that. It's more to do. It created and fostered the space for banks to be that reckless, to go that unregulated. Hence, because one, they were funneling money into something, and this was generating such amount of money. There was also the lack of regulation from government over banks, which led to the crash. I feel that there's a confidence that if you're watching this that you may know what happened, but I'm going to put a brief clips just so you get a good grasp.
But the subprime borrowers don't seem to notice the fine print, and soon enough everyone is buying a home despite some having no possible way of paying off their mortgage. And investment banks are still gobbling up whatever the lenders are throwing at them, meaning that these ticking time bombs are making their way into the MBSs owned by investors. But that's not all. Investment banks are selling collateralized debt obligations similar to the MBS but riskier, and claiming that they're virtually risk-free even as they fill up with these toxic assets. But that's not all again. Despite there only being so many mortgages to invest in, people are using complex derivative investments like synthetic CDOs to bet even more on whether people will make the mortgage payments, which in case you haven't noticed is becoming less likely. Now, surely the rating agencies will notice the heightened default risk and let investors know, hey, by the way, your holdings are full of crap. But wait, Are you kidding? AAA safety rating? Well, everyone, we've done it. We now have a system where lenders don't care about whether mortgage payments are made, investment bankers don't care about risk, and the rating agencies, designed for the people but paid for by the banks, don't care about investors. And for a while, this web of liability and risk holds firm, but it's only a matter of time before the subprime borrowers start to default. And by October 2007, 3% of all US home loans are in the foreclosure process, with another 7% 1 month past due. Mortgage investments are starting to turn into real estate, and investment banks are flooding the market with foreclosed homes. Soon enough, supply is starting to outpace demand, and in 2008, housing prices do something that nobody prepared for. They start to free fall. And so begins the domino effect that was the 2008 financial crisis.
So, if you didn't understand that, I want to put it as simply as possible, and I want you to understand I am oversimplifying it to its most basic form. Subprime mortgages essentially that were the most risky, were pushed in front of the queue as if they weren't as risky, sold in their bulk loads to people who were either on the cusp of couldn't afford it or couldn't afford it. Risky. Grew. The bubble, obviously, as you know, burst. In America, Lehman Brothers went under. In the UK, it was Northern Rock. Shout out to Northern Rock for sponsoring Newcastle. They have had a horrid time with sponsors. Anyway, I'm digressing. Those collapses of the banks forced the governments to bail the banks out because fear of people won't be able to withdraw their cash. Understandable. But since then, what did they do? Did they deregulate the banks? Did they break up the big banks? Some put things in place so essentially the wolves are not in charge of the livestock. No!
Damn!
No, they didn't. I was supposed to pause. Then the clip comes into, then I say no. But I was so like, it's obvious that hasn't happened. And, you know, I don't want to be too historical at this point because let's just get into it, how we've got here today, because now you know that. We're paying the price for that, you know. It is us. House prices have remained inflated. As I was saying with the first part of the video, the landscape and how we got here, it was defense contractors still have inflated prices to this day, despite it being universal that we don't want war. We don't like the idea of war. Businesses still get their way over what the voice of the people want. There is houses on near my mum's, that are going for 900k. They're poorly made. This is a common theme in the UK. In the US, when I was in New York, I went to New York as a kid. I've been to New York a little bit more recently. It has completely been gentrified. It has turned into this place which was a bubbling cultural aspect of US society. It had its own culture. It was probably the most culturally aligned to the UK in terms of migrations, different cultures. And it still is. But it's been completely gentrified. Big business is removing the soul out of things. And people are going to tell you, oh yeah, but we know this. What difference does it make? And that attitude, especially in the UK, I hear that more from people in the UK than I hear in the US. That attitude is the direct reason why this is happening. Why the watchers go unwatched. Why the wolves are in charge of the livestock. That's how we've got here. Houses are still heavily inflated. Not to talk about what happened during COVID. Not to talk about the help to buy schemes and how they don't really help. Some people got part ownerships and they don't really own their homes. The banks won't even give out loans for the homes for that are part ownership. I don't want to be inaccurate. Shared ownership is the term actually. And people will say that, and the problem is, and the sad thing is that when people come to visit London from abroad, whether it's America, Paris, they talk about how much they love this city, how great this city is. Which is a reason I want to bring that up, because I don't want it to be all doom and gloom, because this is a magnificent city, you know. You can eat any cuisine here. You can eat any cuisine here. You can do almost anything here, and it's driving out its people. It's pricing out its people. Like I said earlier, this just is increasing. Xenophobia. It's how Trump came to power. It's how Brexit happened. This is having a real everyday effect.
That you lot can be in the throes of suffering and you refuse to wake up. Like, fam, what is this? Like,
You can see this. We now live in this perpetual state of free Palestine, free Congo, free Sudan. And I just wonder, aren't people tired of that? Aren't people tired of that? When is enough enough? When do you get tired of just the hashtag? When do we get behind policies, rally behind some sort of countermeasures? When is enough enough? That's what brings people like Trump, Machiavellian, perhaps not even intelligent, into power.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
The tariffs, Trump's tariffs. I have seen so much about this, and I don't know if anyone fully has been able to break it down in a simple way. I hope those clips were able to give you a sort of oversight of what is going on. It's still quite moving.
Tariffs have returned to the forefront of economic debate since Donald Trump won the US election and began using them both as a negotiating threat and a tool to fix a long list of identified economic problems. His policy of economic nationalism is nostalgically inspired by the 19th century, when tariffs were the defining trade policy of the United States, a policy that supposedly helped to keep income tax at zero and protected thriving industries. So if it worked for the USA once, could it happen again? It's an idea at the very least worth exploring, since it's promising the possibility that tariffs can create the fiscal wiggle room needed to lower taxes whilst reviving the old industrial heartland of the world's largest economy. Even the most pro-global economists will admit that there's certainly reasons to impose tariffs that make economic sense. That's why large growing economies like India, Brazil, and yes, of course, even China still use them fairly heavily. But the world has changed dramatically since the US last used tariffs with the breadth and depth of the level being proposed today. Nowadays, American consumers are accustomed to cheap goods made through complex global supply chains that depend on low trade barriers. New tariffs would introduce barriers, potentially forcing importing businesses to increase their prices just to stay profitable. This would effectively mean that tariffs are just a sneaky way to tax consumers. Even so, the industrial, employment, and strategic benefits of tariffs could still be worth a potential reduction in consumer purchasing power. Now, of course, recent debate on this issue has been highly politicised, but at the end of the day, tariffs are simply an economic tool. Like a spanner, they aren't inherently good or bad. Need to tighten a loosened bolt? The spanner is very useful. But if you need to perform brain surgery, maybe consider using something else.
The reason why Trump brought them in, it wasn't all just idiocy, I gotta be honest. It is, he wanted to create a space where essentially he could bring jobs back to the US, increase manufacturing, stimulate growth domestically. Some of the countries he targeted with the worst kind of tariffs were Cambodia, Philippines, Vietnam, and as you already know, China. Why is that?
Nobody can compete with us. Nobody.
Essentially, it's because they have the most manufacturing. The problem is, and I'm going to separate China from this because there is some logic to changing their relationship with China. How he's done it, buffoonery. It's why the stock market crashed. People are increasingly believing that Trump is completely incompetent. Completely. There's no other way to word it. But the reason he's targeted Cambodia and Philippines is because they create manufacturing. He wants to take the manufacturing back into the US. But the problem is they're so underpaid. I don't think that it would meet the threshold. You'd also decimate those economies. What happens to economies when they're decimated like that, especially poorer regions?
Which means, if we're right, people lose homes, people lose jobs, people lose retirement savings, people lose pensions. You know what I hate about fucking banking? It reduces people to numbers. Here's a number. Every 1% unemployment goes up, 40,000 people die. Did you know that?
No.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
We were just excited. Just don't fucking dance.
People die. I should say unalive, but I want to say die. And again, I understand because of the war on terror and 9/11, that's why I started this video with that. We're numb to it. We are so numb to the concept of people outside of us passing away because of our actions. We're numb. That's why that won't have impact on you. But if it goes through, which it won't, And by the time of this video, it might have already been confirmed, it hasn't. But this highlights his incompetency if it hasn't gone through. If it was to go through, it would destroy lives, literally destroy lives. The China one, I understand a little bit. They do need to change their relationship. We all need to change our relationship with China. The 140% tariff on China was, again, I just don't think the word idiocy is enough. I don't think incompetent is enough. I don't think buffoon, whatless, idiot does it justice. Idiot actually does it more justice, because you're not even an idiot, you're an idiot. See, idioting, genuinely. Because this is what you got to understand. There is the positive side of increasing domestic growth and domestic wealth. Increasing domestic flow is the term you would hear. Yes, increasing domestic flow. It does have that positive, but 140% of the tariff, which, guys, tariff means tax. It means essentially companies will be paying 140% more to import their goods. Think about what China makes. Think about what 140% of the tariff on that does to us. Who is gonna bear that burden? Companies would crash. I haven't got a problem with Nike crashing. I haven't got a problem with Sony. Shout out to Sony. I think Sony's actually Korean. But anyway, I haven't got a big problem with iPhones. I haven't got a problem with that. But the burden financially would be on us. And we are stretched.
I'm sick of worrying about the government. I can't eat. I'm broke, nigga. I'm broke.
We are stretched already. Stretched is not even the right term. And I just wonder, when do we wake up? When do we get tired? When do we stop distracting ourselves? Like, this is real. How Trump came in. That's why I started the video like this. He came in from a he came in because we had seen corporate greed go so far that we wanted someone Machiavellian. We wanted change, and we trusted a false prophet. To me, an obvious false prophet.
Eating the dogs. Sleepy, crooked Joe Biden. I really don't know what he said. Threatening me with 400 years in prison for possessing my own presidential papers, which just about every other president has done. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent.
It's so bizarre that there's not enough pushback. I'm not even gonna lie, in the UK, especially in the black community, I'm gonna call it what it is. I don't think you guys are doing enough. I don't think you guys care enough. It's black people that face the worst kind of treatment with mental health. They're the first ones to tell you, nobody cares, who cares? Economically, they're the ones not typically, but disproportionately facing the worst sort of hardships. They're the quickest to disconnect from this kind of content. It annoys me to heavens beyond hell how much they sit there and just disconnect and be the first ones to tell me, Tabore, this is too niche. This is... I'm trying to keep calm because I'm ticked. But let's blame Stormzy for his collaboration on McDonald's. Everyone's cool to hate on Storms, as if he created the land space for what's happening today.
I'm pissed.
Yeah, Burke, you want to respond?
Let's talk about this nonsense, this Egypt thing. I'm not even against some of it, but it's just, we're so fixated on the smaller things, we never address the grander problems. Because we never address the grander problems. Like, when do people say enough is enough?
Bull cutting reimbursements to doctors and hospitals. You're wasting our time. About. This is bull. Bill, I'm answering your question.
I remember in the UK that there was a campaign to change the way in which we elected prime ministers, first past the post. Not enough people turned up. It suffered from poor marketing, probably deliberately, but not enough people turned up. And it hit me in that moment that there's a chronic disregard when it comes to information. The media, if they're the legacy media, big corporations like BBC, ITV, they're too hyper-focused. What their corporate sponsors want them to talk about, who are in line and in bed with corporates and politicians. Academics, their stuff is either too puffy and intangible for the everyday person, or they just care about getting research grants to keep themselves going. Independent media care about clicks and shares. Politicians care about their next election cycles. We have been brainwashed into thinking that for some reason, one of them is going to figure it out.
If ordinary people can be convinced in large enough number to be greedy, then we know with certainty ordinary people's kids and grandkids will be poor. It's interesting, right? Because you would think being greedy would make you rich. But we've created this game where if we can convince enough people, poor people and ordinary people, to be greedy enough, then we can absolutely bankrupt the kids of poor and ordinary people. So in a sense, it's kind of a test, really. It's a test for the people of this country, basically. Are enough people willing to make that sacrifice of time and effort to educate themselves, to educate each other, that the only way we can reduce inequality is together?
Society has been tricked that power isn't in the masses. And that's why I get irritated at my own community, because they're so quick to turn off and just go into survival mode. People's lives are worse today than it was in my own lifetime in 2006. I'm not saying that was a perfect time, but it's gotten worse. I have friends that are a bit older than me, quite a bit.
Don't be cheeky.
And I always ask them, what was the difference between like the 80s and now? And they say community. To conclude, the answer to what is going on today, the way in which to change things, is community. Sharing of information, where I stay, if I need a builder, if I need a plumber. It's friends, community, net worth. Your network is your net worth. Getting behind policies. Gary Stevenson, who you would have seen splattered throughout this video, came into province because he was one of the few people genuinely offering a solution to what is going on. I don't know if it's going to work.
Where is the wealth going, Daniel? Where is the wealth going? Who has the wealth now? Who is getting richer? Who is getting the wealth that is lost by our viewers?
I'll tell you where the biggest amounts of money are going. The biggest amounts of money since the pandemic, 11 trillion went just to the value of 7 companies that own technology. So the biggest 7 companies in the USA, 11 trillion has
and
got...
And you don't want their billionaire owners to pay more tax?
Well, would that help the UK?
Well, if you use that money to reduce tax on working people, then it would help, yeah.
They own shares in the USA. They're US citizens. So that doesn't help us here.
And but it will help the American consumer. And then we can export the American consumer. And it will mean the American consumer has money. And then it will show British people how much you can achieve by taxing super rich. We can raise tax on our super rich here. And then what I want is these guys to be taxed so much that they start to sell assets. And then ordinary British people can buy assets again. Because what I want is our viewers to be able to own things, to be able to own their own home.
Taxing people on how much they make, corporations, I do think it bleed into people. But it's one of the few people he's one of the few people, Jimmy the Giant is another person, but he's one of the few people talking about what's going on. It's engaging with people and they're trying to find solutions. But this one video ain't gonna make no difference. Their videos are not gonna make a difference, but sharing information, realizing what's going on, trying in some shape or form to change things is how we do things, realizing there's power in the people. This concept where we've been fooled into being selfish helps keep rich people rich. I'm always reminded by my older friends, my grandma, who bought a place in West London, that it was a partner, it was community that got these people these homes. And the destruction of community, divide and conquer, is how we've lost our space in society. It's how wealth and inequality is continuously growing. People know this and they'd rather be in survival mode. They'd rather blame Stormzy for his collaboration with McDonald's than to realize that we've been put in a systemic, perpetual state of fear of this war, pending war, cyber war, crisis here, economic crisis, health crisis. That we're spinning around, that we can't even know when to focus on one problem. We'll bring one celebrity, one black celebrity, for a collaboration that even if he screamed and shouted, he wouldn't make a dent of difference.
Like
For all his resources as well, because he's a wealthy guy. He's a wealthy guy. He wouldn't have made a dent of difference, but we rather chastise him, cancel him, than address the issues. Even if it's futile. I'm pissed. I ain't gonna lie, I'm pissed. I do think working together, getting behind policies and just a little bit more awareness of what is going on can tackle this issue. I don't want to go on for too long, guys. I've ranted. I hope next week's episode is a lot more, not next week, next 2 weeks' episode is a lot more positive. I just want people to wake up to what's really going on in society. I've got no problem with distraction content, fun content, no problem with that. But if that's the only thing that we're all talking about and we're not trying to make even little inroads to what is going on in everyday life, we're missing the point. What is underneath my nose? I'm out.
I did battle with ignorance today, and ignorance won. I admit that I'm often vexed at the behavior of my own people. Yeah, vexed is a good word. Do what you can to help black folks, and they make you wonder why you even bother. But they're our people, and we gotta love them regardless. One thing for sure, though, can't blame this one on the white man. What am I saying? Of course I can.